Amazing. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're watching the replay, give us a hello in the comments. Let us know after the fact so that we can come around and say hello to you. But if you are starting to hop on live, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us and thank you for tuning in today. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Emma Clayton. Emma is a business strategist, multi-award-winning marketer, and gender pay gap expert. She's on a mission to change the lives of all self-employed and entrepreneurial women by closing the 43%, yes, you heard that right, 43% entrepreneurial gender pay gap and creating greater financial independence for them in the generations behind. Now, this is a number that I just mentioned to Emma off air. This number really, really struck me because we all know about the gender pay gap in corporate and we all understand that. And we almost blame that on the patriarchy and the old boys clubs and all those kinds of things. But the gender pay gap in entrepreneurial women being 43% really shocked me because after all, we're in charge of what we charge and we're in charge of the profit our business makes and we're in charge of the take home that we get. So Emma, help us here. How on earth is this happening?
Oh gosh, it's a deep, complicated web of reasons. There is no one solution, and I think that's why it has gone untackled. But the biggest problem is that no one is aware of it and no one's talking about it. It's a little bit like all of these things, the underbellies, they sort of go on until somebody says, hang on a second, this is wrong. And when you project that number forward into the future, there is a ticking time bomb about to happen for women of my generation. The average self-employed woman is my age, 46. And so, when we've got 20 years before, standard retirement, there is no such thing as too late. You can start to really change the course of your financial future. But the state pension is not enough for us to live on. We all know that. And so people will have mortgages and savings. And then when you look at the stats for self-employed women, only a third of self-employed women can access mortgages. So they don't have the house to fall back on. We're not saving, because of that gap, we're not saving enough money into pensions or investments. So we're going to hit this point in time and state pension will not cover us. And we don't have any of those assets built up.
Because we've been paying ourselves too little in the previous however many years.
Yeah, because if you're in corporate, they pay in a pension. It's compulsory now.
Yeah.
It's not compulsory when you're self-employed. So there's all of these different complicated things. So there's that patriarchal sort of thing that nobody said, hang on, there's all these women. Now, we don't have enough female entrepreneurs in the business, in the country. We are losing £1 billion a year to the economy just by not having enough women. That was in the Rose Report of 2018. But what is also happening is that we're still in this culture of breadwinner homemaker.
Yes.
And so women are leaving. We've never had so many women leave the workforce as we have in the last few years, especially in the pandemic. And so they're having this dual role, and so they're leaving and saying, well, I'll be part-time, or I'll just take this freelance or consulting job and I'll just make do, when actually they've got so much experience that they don't have to just make do. But it's almost a trade-off in their mind of pick the kids up from school, earn money. And what I want to do is say to people, you can do that. You can do both.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of,
And I think with the, the tug and the balance between kind of running a business and being the homemaker, I think that that's something that has probably, there probably is that sort of view that actually in years gone by, the women were making kind of what they called pin money. So it was like, oh, the woman's got a business, but you know, it's just her kind of little interest. And it was almost downplayed historically if a woman had their own business. And I suspect some of that is seeps into modern culture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when women do set up their own business, 90% of them are just that woman. So they're not businesses, they are freelancing, consulting, you know, just dipping your toe in, but not really having the commitment. But there's so much more opportunity out there. And it is possible. I managed to make a 7-figure business in 2.5 years as a single parent. And so I come from this real, you know, I don't say that to sort of show off in any way. I do it from a real visceral, if I can do this, you can do this. Like, there's nothing special about me other than, you know, I've never been a fan of the patriarchal society that tells me I can't. I always go, hang on, watch me. So anyone can do this. And I think it's having the knowledge, the education around how to do it. So yeah.
So does it come down to, with this gender pay gap in entrepreneurship, does it come down to the fact that women are sometimes, often working less hours anyway, because they are taking care of children as well? Or does it come down to when a woman is, you know, pitching for a contract or pricing her services, she is typically doing that at a lower rate to the rate man is typically doing it? Or is it a mixture of those things?
It's a mixture of both. So the difference between the gender pay gap and equality pay are similar but different. Okay. So equality pay is in 1950 something, we had this Equality Pay Act for companies had to pay the same of a man and a woman doing the same job.
Yes.
That's not in self-employment.
Yeah.
And that's the issue here. Whereas the gender pay gap is a bigger piece where actually it is, like you say, the take-home income of, because women are working less hours. But that piece in the self-employed is around that 43% is that a woman will charge 43% less than a man for the same job, and probably do it, as we know women do things very differently, you know, in a more diligent, collaborative, collegiate way, which, as we know, is sort of how businesses need to be steering towards to be successful. You know, we're in this era of community and collaboration for businesses and partnerships and supporting, and women have got those skills in droves. So yeah, it's heartbreaking to see, really. And in fact, actually, I had somebody, I have this daily, but this is an example I got about 3 days ago. And a woman said that she lost a contract and she pitched it in, I think it's about 750 quid. And she lost it to a guy that put it in at 6,000. And she's like, how did I not get chosen? And I was like, well, because you basically said, I'm rubbish.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes we are doing a disservice. And when I work with a lot of my clients who put prices up, they're flabbergasted that the number of clients wanting to work with them increases, because they are showing up powerfully with their self, you know, ability to, I hate the word self-worth attached to it. You are still worthy, regardless.
They're showing up in their value, in the value that they're providing.
Yeah. Totally aware of the results and outcomes that they can give. And a lot of women will price themselves where they'll say, well, you know, I earned this much in my corporate job, so I just want to earn the same money, but a little bit more for tax. And I'm like, no, stop. Because the whole principle of being self-employed is you can set the prices, you can out-earn anything that you do in employment, totally out-earn it. And so we just need to think differently about how we price and position ourselves in the market when we come in. And nobody's teaching this. You know, this isn't to in any way, you know, make anyone feel guilty or shameful. We're just not taught.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, you know, this is fascinating in itself, because this 43% entrepreneurial gender pay gap is basically almost wholly, actually, is it almost wholly related to the mindset of the individual woman as opposed to anything else?
I think there's some mindset issues in there for sure.
Mm.
There's a lot of money blocks in there. There's a lot
Yes.
of, stories and narratives that we have around, well, nobody will pay that for me. Oh my gosh, I would never pay that kind of money. Oh, that's such a lot. Or, and they think about it as a figure rather than the results. So, would you spend, don't forget as well that a lot of these women will be selling to other businesses very similar or more. And so to say it's £5,000 for a package of whatever it is, freelance work, client work, coaching, consulting, whatever, which are a lot of the mainstays. If that then delivers results, so say you're a marketing consultant and you go in and say, right, it's £5,000 to do your strategy and to look at your year's implementation. If that then grows that business by another 100 or 150 grand, that £5,000 is a bargain. So it's about learning how do you position that £5,000 so it's not £5,000. Wow, this is so much money. I'm so sorry. And we're almost
I was going to say that exactly. Almost apologizing for your pricing.
It's like, this is £5,000 and this is going to give you another 150 grand in your business. Like, this is a bargain. In fact, actually, if somebody that I work with is creating 150 grand in someone else's business, I'd be saying you need 10% of that. So I'd be getting a 15 grand package. But we have this, oh, well, it just takes me, a couple of days to do it. So, that wouldn't feel right. And it's almost, we have to erase that narrative. I had another amazing client, and she's so good at what she does. And she said, oh, well, I charge by the hour. And she said, it's really good value for my clients there because I can get it done in half the time as anyone else. And I said, well, then you're screwing yourself because like you're not getting paid for the expertise.
And any efficiencies she makes in her business are actually to her own detriment as well.
So if you are charging by the hour or for time and you are amazing what you do and can do it quicker, like you are really creating your own
a rod for your own back. This is so fascinating to me. I love the story that you told about the £750 versus the £3,000 pitch, because I know that I have gone to service providers to get something done and I have gone, oh, they're really cheap. Maybe they're not as good as I thought they were. Maybe their stuff they put on social media is a bit hyped up and actually they're not that great. And that is purely based on the fact that one person has quoted me significantly less than I expected from it. And so I suspect this happens quite a lot from people. And although I would never say price the same as your competition, you do need to be aware of what the market charges generally for the type of thing you deliver. And clearly in this instance, actually, as women, we need to be aware of what men in the market typically charge and not just surveying our other female friends as to what they charge, because clearly with this 43%, that can give us an incredibly skewed view of what we might start kind of thinking about as our sort of ballpark starting figure.
When I work with clients, the first question that I ask them is, are you average? And they go, no. And I go, okay, well, tell me about your pricing in the market. Are you cheap, middle, expensive? Where are you? And they go, oh, well, I'm cheap to middle. And I go, okay, so your prices aren't even average. They're below average. So you're above average in your skill, but your prices are below average. And they go, oh, yeah, I didn't think of it like that. So it's really fascinating that we really downplay ourselves and we kind of just pluck a figure we'd be happy with rather than what we should be getting. And actually, if we were pricing ourselves that way, we wouldn't need to work as often. And we could do the part-time, we could still get the money that we had in corporate and work part-time. So, I mean, it's just a different reframe. One of the things that I always use as an example is it's like the commodity thinking. And I used to work in corporate as I used to do lots of different things. It was always in marketing roles, marketing director, launch,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And I used to, so our biggest client was the NHS, and we know the NHS has got, like, they're so cash strapped, like they're literally doing things, pennies.
Mm-hmm.
And we were selling these really high value medicines in a very cash strapped. And so we had to find all of these benefits that people would, have these value propositions. And I learned really quickly how to do an amazing value proposition. And it's about putting in all of those benefits that's more than a commodity. So if I can just share this with you, it'd probably take a few minutes. But if you think about, like, a massive commodity for a woman is a pair of knickers. Like, we all wear them, or most of us wear them.
I'm thinking most people listening are.
Yeah, they're all shapes and sizes, but we all wear knickers. We all have, more than one pair, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And it's a commodity. They do the same thing. It doesn't really matter where you get them from. Mm-hmm. But if you think about, if you just go to Primark, you can get a pack of knickers that are probably £1 each. Mm-hmm. Five for a fiver. Mm-hmm. And then if you go to, Boo Avenue, they start to become like £2.50 a pair, mm-hmm. or a bit more. And then you go to Pink, and they're like £10-11 a pair. Mm-hmm. You go to Selfridges, they become like £30-odd a pair. And then if you go like up to Rigby and Pella, where the Queen gets her knickers, they like go on there. They're over £100 a pair, and people are buying them.
Yeah.
So that shows that even with a pair of knickers, I mean, like, the material is the same. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, like, they don't in price get bigger. The material, in some cases, they get smaller. Like little tiny thongs or whatever. But it just goes to show that people will pay, and you might get less people paying, buying the Rigby and Pella knickers than you get Primark. But there is a market for every single one. And some people will buy the Primark knickers for certain, times, and others will for other times, and somewhere in the middle. And we'll all have like our best knickers, and because it's how it makes us feel when we wear them. And you don't go around going, oh, I've got my Rigby and Pella knickers on, do you want to have a look? It's how you feel as a person. And it's about creating that emotional connection with what you do, so that you can charge the Rigby and Pella prices, especially if you are an above average, skill set, and you've worked in corporate a long time, or you've had your own business a long time, and now all of this knowledge you're going to start sharing. It's just a way to think about emotional benefits over that commoditization. And a lot of women price themselves as a commodity.
Do you think that women in general are more scared to charge, in some instances, to charge more for fear that they won't meet the expectations of the end person, and therefore that will create them problems? I'm thinking of a situation that I heard years ago, and it was in relation to a situation in corporate where it said, typically, if there's a job advert out there and a woman reads the job ad and she doesn't go for the job because she goes, oh, I can only do about 80% of things on that list. Like, I can't do them all. Best not go for that one. Like, that's clearly too much for me. Whereas a man will read the list and they'll go, oh, I can do 50% of that stuff. So that'll be fine. I'll go for that job. And I suspect there's similar things happening with women's pricing, that actually they're scared that should they put the prices up, they'll have a client that said, well, you weren't worth $5,000, and they'll get that kind of negative pushback.
100%. So it came from a study that Hewlett Packard did, actually. Okay. It was, I don't know if it was the 80s, 90s. And they surveyed women and men about this job application. And you're right. And it was women wouldn't, if the men had 60%, they went for it. The women would only go for it if she had 90-100%.
Yeah.
And it's a fear. And that's why women have got this perfectionist sort of approach to something, because they have this fear underneath. And there's so many fears. There's fears of rejection. There's fears of almost being too successful, because if I'm successful, then it means I've got to work really, really hard, and I've got to be perfect, and I've got to give extra, and I don't know if I can. Or there's also then the fear of failure, that, you know, I'm not good enough, and that's a big, big one. For those that have left corporate, there's the fear of judgment. You know, what will my ex-colleagues think that are still on the old salary, and I'm saying that I'm, you know, doubling almost what I'm doing, and who they're going to think, who does she think she is now? And or there's the fear of you know, what their family might think as well. And sometimes that fear of success as well is around, you know, they fear that they're going to be successful, have more money, and then lose those relationships around them. And women just desperately want to be in community. It's a tribal thing. We want to fit in, we want to belong, we want to be part of everything. And suddenly, if we say, hey, I'm different because I'm earning more, we feel like suddenly we're going to be rejected from that community and belonging. So there's a subconscious fear that suddenly it's going to change who we are. And, you know, you hear all the time, you know, rich bitch, or, you know, the people that, you know, are portrayed as having money, they're portrayed as, you know, suddenly becoming a bitch. And so there's all of that going on as well, where women are like, well, I don't want to become that person. I'm just really happy being the mum, and, you know, I just want to earn enough, because I don't want to change, and I don't want to lose my position in my community. So there's so much going on underneath, and it's just being able to sort of work with it and understand what is going on, and just empower women around money. And, you know, we're not having enough conversations about money. You know, you sit with your mates and I mean, I used to be in a book club, and we didn't read many books, actually. We just sit and talk. We'd occasionally read a book. But, you know, all of these groups where women get together or go to the pub, go off to spa days, whatever, the topic of conversation is generally kids, partners. You know, you can talk about, you know, your sex life really openly. You get in competition about the trauma of the childbirth.
Yes.
We never talk about money. We don't talk about how much we earn. We don't talk about anything to do with that. We just, it's like a very you know, British thing that we just steer. And I think
it's rude. It's rude. That's what we get told. It's rude to talk about money. Don't talk about money or politics. It's rude.
Yeah. And it's greedy, and it's self-indulgent, and it's shallow. And again, in community, you want to fit in. You don't want to be ousted. You don't want to be seen as that kind of person. So we don't talk about money. I think that's the biggest thing, is talking about money, because if you go, how much do you earn, or how much do you earn, it starts to normalize. Because you go, oh, hang on, maybe I need to be asking for more. Or so you'll see self-employed women talk about money a little bit more, but we're still uncomfortable.
Yeah, and also, like we kind of touched on before too, if you're only talking to other self-employed women about it, you've basically created an echo chamber for yourself, which keeps you all in that 43% entrepreneurial gender pay gap as well. So also extending those conversations to men and other males in your industry that are running businesses is probably a pretty important step too, to actually go, oh wait, hang on, what? You charge what? You're charging the $6,000 and I'm quoting the 750. How is that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. And as women, we tend to get locked in women's groups, because only the women understand that, you know, we've got the homemaking and the business, etc. So it's really good to go out and equalize and listen to, you know, what guys are doing, and follow guys that are doing similar things, and see what their pricing, you know, is at. And don't go, oh, hang on a minute, who does he think he is? Think, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I need to level up here, because the only people we're hurting here is ourselves and our business. But we're actually, it's the generation behind us. So I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I want her to know that, you know, she doesn't have to do the traditional school, A-levels, university, corporate job. You know, I want her to learn entrepreneurial skills now and be able to access that should she want to, because you can create so much more wealth and financial freedom by breaking some of these narratives and the patriarchal system again. And the patriarchal system doesn't work, because we can see already corporates don't really give to working mothers. You know, and in the pandemic, we saw that. And I think the pandemic did do some good things for us because working from home and the flexibility. And we proved that we work more diligently at home. We're not skiving, watching This Morning and whatever else is on, which is what people used to think when you're working from home today. So you won't really. So I think it's done a favour where we all now have had a taste of it. But I still think that, there's not enough women at the top in companies. There's not enough women in business. We just need to give them all a bit of a push forward, and we need to change this, because that divergent thinking of having, male and female brain together solving problems and moving things in corporate is profound. But, we can't lose the greatness that we bring as women to our clients.
I wonder too if some of these discussions also start at home as well. If you are in a relationship and you're running a business, how does your partner actually view that business? Did they view it as a pin money business? Did they view your business stuff as, oh yeah, whatever, she's just doing this around the kids? Or are they viewing it as, okay, this is a route to our financial freedom as a family? And I think that probably also impacts how women are pricing and treating the money in their own business too, because if they're getting these messages at home as well, that actually your business isn't financially contributing really to our family in any meaningful way, and you're still the one that is solely or 98% responsible for keeping the household, picking up the kids, doing the after school clubs, making sure the uniforms are washed, all that stuff, then actually I think it makes it harder as well for the women in the household to I'm assuming, two heterosexual male-female relationship here. There's a kind of 2.4 children life, and not everyone leads that. But I suspect in that situation, that comes into play as well.
Yeah, and I think, regardless of 2.4, I think it's around, regardless. I mean, I've always been successful in my business. And my brother is incredibly supportive of me, and he's, a mad entrepreneur as well. Not mad as in crazy mad, but, really successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
To be careful in case he watches this. And it's really interesting because on Boxing Day, I was talking to my nieces about exactly this, and they were like, "Oh, this is amazing. This, this is so right. All my friends that are boys now are starting to become feminists, and we're starting to see this sort of change in the younger generation." But my brother really interestingly said, "Oh yeah, so I did a talk at the girls' school. It was a bit of a boys' talk, but you could go in and talk about gender pay gap, which is my big campaign for the year." And I said, "Oh, interestingly, what was your boys' talk?" And he said, "Oh, just how to set up an 8-9 figure business."
So the boys are learning about that, but the girls are not.
Yeah, but also to think it's even a boys' talk, and I'm sitting here going, hello, I'm teaching women how to do the same thing. So why, yeah. So, and that is in my family where they're supporting me. So imagine if it's in a family where they're not supporting. And, he hands up, went, "Oh my God, I am part of the problem." But yeah, if you're in your base, you are the person you are is from the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. And if those people are, not necessarily understanding or supportive or encouraging you and lifting you up, I think it's probably, you don't need to ditch those people, but find somewhere where they are lifting you and inspiring you and creating that real motivation in you to up level and play bigger. Because when you get in those networks, they are really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and they often say to you, raise your prices. They will all those networks as well.
Yeah, totally. Even me. I mean, I go out and I talk about this all the time. I've considered myself a bit of a pricing expert. And even I sit and go, maybe that's really too cheap.
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about all the women that are starting that can't necessarily afford it. So what I have done, and which I would always encourage everyone, is to have a price point for different people. So have a price point for the Primark knickers, a price point for the pink, for the selfie, for those people at different stages and different wealth points. And not to say that they will stay as a Primark knicker buyer, but give them some aspiration to then become the Marks and Spencer's knicker buyer. And it's the ladder of ascension of the different products. And the more time that someone has of you, the more expensive it is. But how can you create support for the clients that you want to support, but that can't necessarily afford your time? How can you do that? And that's like the starting point.
Yeah, what we actually do in my business, in my accounting firm, is we have a price scale, and it is basically based off the business's level of revenue, because we know that a business under a certain size ultimately needs less support from us than a bigger business does. And so we scale it for revenue, which means that we can still support startups because there's a level they can come in that gives them what they need and makes sure their compliance is taken care of. But it also means we can support £1 million plus businesses with the level of service that they then need when they start needing, financial director support and all that kind of stuff. And we have scales in between. And I think that's a great way to be able to serve those people that you once were. Because I think often we want to serve those people that we once were, and we look at our pricing and we think, I wouldn't have been able at that point in time to afford me. Therefore, I don't want to be that person. So I'm going to keep my prices lower.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. That's totally nail on the head. That's what we do. We often say, well, I'm going to go back and help the people before me. And when we lower the prices and we keep ourselves lower, but actually you're right, we should be thinking, well, what did I need at that point that I can create that doesn't need any of my time? And so, you're and also as those businesses grow or as needs grow of your clients, they want more and more support. So you're right, it's about creating and understanding the customer and their needs and what it is, and being able to position and those products. And it is just thinking about, the knicker scenario, because people will pay. This is a commodity, and you see the commodities all over. You see it with cars, you see it with the functional benefits, a hotel, you see it with plane journeys. People will pay 10 grand for a flight when other people are paying 300.
Yes, they're on the same plane. They are getting there. They're leaving at the same time, and they are arriving at the same time. They all still have to queue for customs. Like they're all the only difference.
Restaurants on the plane. Some people want to go to McDonald's. Some people want to go to Michelin. They're still getting fed.
Yeah.
And often those Michelins are like £100 for a plate of food that doesn't even fill a rabbit. So
you have to go to McDonald's on the way home just to top yourself up.
And Stella McCartney never said, oh, hang on a minute, River Island have got a bag here that's the same size as mine for for 30 quid. God, no one's going to buy my £700 bag. She said, hang on, you buy my £700 bag and you buy into these emotions of having a Stella McCartney bag, and it's aspirational. It's the same size bag and it still holds the same amount of stuff. So it's just how we think about ourselves within that market.
Yeah, and I think that aspirational word is really interesting, because I suspect lots of people watching and listening have entrepreneurs that they look up to, or coaches, mentors, strategists, etc., that they look up to, and they think, oh, I'd love one day to be able to afford to work with this person. And the thing is that no matter where you are in business, it is likely that somebody is thinking that about you as well. And that's completely okay for that to happen. You don't have to. Your inspirational entrepreneur that you look up to, let's say it's, I don't know, Gary Vee. He's not suddenly going to say to you, oh, don't worry, Annette, you can pay me 50 quid for an hour of my time, even though I usually charge it at goodness knows what you might charge that I don't know, 500k, because you're a small business and I feel a bit sorry for you. And he doesn't do that, and we don't need to either.
So true. What he probably will do is think about how he can give you whatever it is that you need from him, where he doesn't have to come and reduce his prices for you.
Yeah.
But he'll create something that you can buy for 50 quid that
Yes.
still helps you.
Yeah. Exactly. Emma, this has been a fascinating discussion. I am so pleased that I have my eyes opened to this 43% entrepreneurial gender pay gap. I am actually going to also go through all of our clients and compare based on gender and actually see what we can see from our side when it comes
I'd
to
love to know what comes up. I'd really love to see that.
I will definitely let you know, Emma, because this is just fascinating to me and something that I just did not focus on existed at all in the entrepreneurial sphere. So I have thoroughly enjoyed learning about this and hearing about it. And as I say, I'm going to do some digging as well. Emma, why don't you let our listeners and viewers know where they can find out more about you and where you hang out online?
So they can come find me on Instagram at £1 Million Mentor, or they can find me in LinkedIn as Emma Clayton Business Strategist.
Amazing. And we'll also, for those that are listening on the podcast, we'll put those links in the show notes as well, so that they will be there for people to click through. Emma, thank you so much again for joining me today. It really has been a great discussion, and I have loved learning about this. So thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.